Rick Coretti, and the new majority came in and pulled Rick Coretti out. So it's not just the cases, it's the administration of the courts. Anybody over here? Yes, sir.
Question. There is a person that is in the process of being appointed for the Supreme Court at the federal level now. Is she, which kind of a judge is she?
Okay. The question for those of you who couldn't hear that is, there is a nominee in the dock in the Senate going through the confirmation process for the United States Supreme Court. What kind of jurist is she going to be? Did you hear how the president's criteria that I read to you? I think she's an empathy judge. She may not be a wise Latina, but she's an empathy judge. Yes, sir, in the yellow. Yes?
Yeah, Judge, in light of today's decision, Second Amendment, has the Michigan Canceled Act ever gone before your court?
Yes. I wrote the decision. You have a right to defend your home. Yes, sir? Then you.
Yes. What is your own view on the constitutionality of Obamacare? If that came before a court that you were on, would you, as you understand the law, would you believe it would pass constitutional muster?
Let me be very careful in answering your question. The question is, do I have a legal opinion on Obamacare? I think I'm going to pass. But it sort of is an interesting question of if the federal government is a government of limited powers, unlike our state government, which is general powers. The federal Constitution is essentially a gift to the federal government of ceded powers from the people in the several states that created it. It's a limited government. But Obamacare sort of makes it unclear what limits there are with a limited government, it seems to me. Yes, sir.
Elena Kagan, how could she be a judge, Supreme Court judge, if she's never been a judge?
Well, the question is, how can a person who's never been a judge become a Supreme Court justice? And the answer to that question is, you don't even have to be a lawyer to be a Supreme Court justice. Now, and let me just suggest to you, the last person who was not previously judge appointed was, I think, Rehnquist, who turned out pretty good. Then we had Earl Warren, who was pretty bad. But, you know, what you really want in a Supreme Court justice is somebody who's learned in the law and who believes in the law rather than believes that they are a lot smarter than the rest of us and that they want their values embedded in the Constitution. I take a judicial traditionalist, a conservative, who'd never been on the bench, who was committed to law. I don't think at that level it isn't essential that you've been a judge. What is essential is that you be familiar and committed to our Constitution. Yes, sir.
Thank goodness that we have an opportunity to restore the Michigan State Court by electing justices. How is it that at the federal level we don't have that choice? Why is it an appointment rather than an elected position?
The question is, thank God we have the right to try and restore the Michigan Supreme Court to a traditionalist court. How come we don't have that privilege at the federal level? The reason is, when our country was founded, no one elected anyone, basically. The founders were actually quite leery about electing officials. As a matter of fact, it wasn't until our Constitution was amended in the 20th century, I think it was 20th century, that senators were directly elected. the legislatures used to elect senators. It was an indirect process. What happened is from our founding until about 1830, which is the Jacksonian era, when this idea of popular elections as a means of the public controlling their elected officials gained currency. And so every state that entered the Union during and after the Jacksonian era, including Michigan, elected its judges, along with everybody else in government. In fact, what we did in our last Constitution was reduce the number of elected officials from what had existed in the 19th century Constitution.
Could we not unappoint senators prior to 1913? In other words, if they were not listening to our state legislature, could they not be removed?
The question is how you remove, you can impeach a senator.
So in other words, prior to 1913, they were appointed and remained in that position?
No, they were appointed for terms.
For a term?
Right. They were appointed by the legislature for terms the same way the people elect them to terms, except one was an indirect process and the other was a direct elective process. Way in the back. Way in the back. I'll get you. I see you. Okay.
Currently, people of the opinion, and you even hear legislators make the point that Supreme Court justices are appointed for life, and according to the Constitution, that's not the case. They are appointed while, and they remain in office while they're behaving. Why is it that nobody discusses that and brings that up? And whenever you have a justice who is what's the term you use?
An empathy, tummy judge. I mean, there are any number of.
Congress cannot just take them out of
They can. The question is, the Constitution says the judges, federal judges, serve while on good conduct, something approaching that, something like that. And everybody sort of says, well, that's a lifetime appointment. And it's true that it doesn't say lifetime appointment, but while on good conduct,